The glass facade Miranda Frost entered her office on the 47th floor exactly how everyone expected, in a wheelchair, chin held high, eyes sharp as winter. At 36, she'd built TerraSync Technologies from a startup to a billion-dollar company, and a skiing accident 4 months ago wasn't going to change that. What no one knew was that for the past 2 weeks, she could stand and even walk short distances. Her physical therapist called it remarkable progress. Miranda called it an opportunity. "Your new assistant starts today," said Zoe Chen, Miranda's chief operating officer and oldest friend, closing the office door behind them. "Are you sure about this charade? Testing people's loyalty by lying about your recovery seems necessary," Miranda finished, glancing at the dossier on her desk. "James Sullivan, 32, previously executive assistant to that venture capital shark Donovan?" Zoe sighed. "Not everyone's like Elliot, you know. One disloyal partner doesn't mean 3 financial leaks in 6 months means exactly what I think it means," Miranda interrupted, pushing herself up from the wheelchair to stand briefly before the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her legs trembled slightly but held. "Someone close to me is selling our moves to Compass Tech. I need to know who before we announce the neural interface patent." The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Sullivan is here, Ms. Frost." Miranda lowered herself back into the wheelchair. "Send him in." James Sullivan entered with quiet confidence, tall with warm brown skin, closely cropped black hair, and intelligent eyes that assessed the room without being intrusive. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored but not flashy. "Ms. Frost, thank you for this opportunity," he said, his voice measured and respectful. Miranda gestured to the chair across from her. "Your references are impressive, Mr. Sullivan. Why leave Donovan's firm for an assistant position here?" "Because working for someone who builds things is more appealing than working for someone who just buys them," he replied without hesitation. "And because TerraSync's neural interface technology could change how people with physical disabilities interact with the world. That matters to me." Miranda raised an eyebrow. "My condition is temporary. Don't mistake me for a philanthropist." "I didn't," James replied, meeting her gaze. "Your technology will help people whether that's your primary intention or not. The best innovations often do." Something about his directness caught Miranda off guard. Most people either pitied her or tried too hard to ignore her wheelchair. "The job requires absolute discretion, long hours, and the ability to anticipate problems before they arise," she said. "Your primary loyalty must be to me and this company." "I understand," James said. "May I ask a question?" Miranda nodded once. "The dossier you have open lists my experience, but not why I left my previous positions," James observed. "Aren't you curious?" Miranda's lips curved slightly. "I already know. You refused to falsify documents for Donovan's tax evasion scheme. Your principles cost you a 6-figure bonus." James didn't flinch. "Then you know where I stand on loyalty. It goes to people who deserve it, not just those who demand it." For the first time in months, Miranda felt something like genuine interest. This man might be exactly what she needed, or dangerous in ways she couldn't yet see. "You start immediately," she said. "Zoe will show you your desk. First task, find out everything about Compass Tech's movements in the past month. I want it by tomorrow morning." As he left, Miranda turned back to the window, fingers gripping the wheelchair's armrests. The game had begun. Walls of paper 3 weeks into his position, James had already proven himself invaluable. His report on Compass Tech had revealed their aggressive acquisition strategy targeting neural interface startups. Information. Miranda used to secure exclusive partnerships with 2 key research labs before her competitors could approach them. James anticipated her needs almost intuitively, from reorganizing board meeting presentations to handling difficult clients with a diplomatic touch that had previously required Miranda's personal attention. Today he entered her office with her afternoon tea, mint with honey, no sugar, and placed it on her desk alongside the quarterly projections she'd requested. "The board meeting is in 30 minutes, he said. "I've prepared supplementary materials addressing the questions Director Hamilton typically asks about R&D expenditures." Miranda looked up from her screen. "And the Wong account?" Ms. Wong called to reschedule next week's demo. "Her daughter is graduating and she'd like to attend." I've already adjusted your calendar and sent the development team the extra time to refine the prototype. Miranda nodded, impressed, despite herself. You seem to have thought of everything. Not quite everything, James said, his expression carefully neutral. You have physical therapy at 6. Dr. Patel mentioned wanting to reassess your progress, given how quickly you're advancing. Miranda's eyes narrowed slightly. Had he emphasized the word quickly, or was she being paranoid? Cancel it, she said. The neural patent filing takes priority. With respect, Ms. Frost, your recovery should take priority over work that I can help manage, James countered. His eyes held genuine concern, not the calculated sympathy she'd grown to despise. Later that afternoon, Miranda watched James from her office as he fielded calls and coordinated with department heads. Twice, she caught him standing to stretch his legs, unaware she was observing. Each time, his gaze flickered toward her office, as if checking whether she needed anything. That evening, after most employees had left, Miranda tested him. She deliberately dropped a file on the floor beyond her reach while they were reviewing acquisition targets. Could you get that for me? She asked, watching him carefully. James retrieved the file but placed it directly in her hands rather than on the desk, looking her in the eye. These smaller firms in Berlin are especially promising. The neural interface applications for stroke recovery align with our research. Miranda felt a flicker of unease. Was that a deliberate hint? Did he know? Or was she becoming paranoid? You've been here late every night this week, she noted. Don't you have a personal life, Sullivan? James smiled slightly. I have a life outside work, yes. But right now, this project matters more than my usual Thursday night jazz club. You play? Piano. Not professionally. Just for myself and friends occasionally. Miranda found herself curious about this glimpse into his life outside Terra Sync. I used to play violin before you became CEO or before the accident? He asked. Both, she answered, surprising herself with the admission. I miss it sometimes. A moment of unexpected connection hung between them, quickly broken when Miranda's phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. Compass Tech CEO spotted having dinner with your former CFO. Discussing financing? Miranda's expression hardened. That's all for tonight, Sullivan. As James gathered his things to leave, Miranda pressed a hidden button beneath her desk. The security camera footage from the hallway appeared on her secondary monitor. She watched as James stopped at the water cooler where Vince from Legal, coincidentally, appeared. How's working for the Ice Queen? Vince asked casually. Ms. Frost is brilliant and focused, James replied without hesitation. And I'd appreciate if you didn't use that nickname. Miranda zoomed in on his face, searching for signs of insincerity. Finding none, she turned off the monitor, suddenly uncomfortable with her surveillance. For the first time since her accident, Miranda wondered if perhaps not everyone was waiting for her to fail. Cracking foundation. The autumn rain pounded against the windows of Terra Sync Tower as Miranda stared at the latest financial reports. Compass Tech had made another aggressive move, this time poaching one of their senior engineers. The leak was growing more damaging by the week. It has to be someone in the executive team, Miranda muttered, pressing her palms against her temples. She'd been out of the wheelchair for 3 weeks now at the office, maintaining the pretense only for public appearances and board meetings. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. James entered with a steaming cup of tea and a concerned expression. You've been in here for 10 hours straight, he said. The security team is starting night rotation, and you haven't eaten since those 2 bites of salad at noon. Miranda waved dismissively. I'm fine. You're not, James replied with unexpected firmness, placing the tea on her desk. And with respect, your recovery won't progress if you don't take care of yourself. Miranda froze. My recovery? Your physical therapist called about rescheduling tomorrow's session. I took the liberty of confirming since you've canceled the last 3. His eyes met hers, steady and unaccusing. How long have you known? She asked quietly. James's expression didn't change. That you can walk? Since the 2nd week. You stood to reach files on the top shelf when you thought I'd left for lunch. Miranda felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack, and you said nothing. It wasn't my place, he replied simply. I assumed you had your reasons. The admission hung between them, changing something fundamental about their relationship. Miranda found herself unexpectedly relieved even as alarm bells rang in her mind. I ordered dinner, James continued, as if they were discussing something ordinary. Nothing fancy, just pasta from that place you mentioned liking last week. It'll be here in 15 minutes. Miranda stood, testing her legs after hours of sitting. Why are you still here, James? It's nearly midnight. Because the Compass Tech situation is critical and you shouldn't handle it alone, he answered, moving to the conference table where he'd laid out documents. I've been analyzing communication patterns among the executive team. Miranda joined him at the table, their shoulders nearly touching as they leaned over his work. The proximity felt strangely intimate after months of carefully maintained distance. Look at the timing, he continued. Every leak corresponded with these board meetings where certain materials were distributed. As they worked through the evidence, the rain intensified outside. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating James's focused profile. Miranda found herself studying the determined set of his jaw, the thoughtful furrow between his brows. It's Marcus, she realized suddenly, pointing to a pattern in the data. My own COO. It appears so, James confirmed gently. I'm sorry. The betrayal from someone she'd trusted for years hit Miranda harder than she'd expected. She turned away, unwilling to let James see her vulnerability. But as she moved, her leg, still not fully recovered, buckled beneath her. James caught her before she could fall, one arm around her waist, the other steadying her elbow. For a moment, they stood frozen in the unexpected embrace, Miranda's hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat quickening beneath her palm. I've got you, he said softly. Something in his voice, concern without pity, strength without dominance, broke through Miranda's final defenses. She didn't pull away. Why didn't you expose me? She whispered. You could have gone to the board, told them I was deceiving everyone. James's gaze held hers. Because your recovery belongs to you. Your reasons for keeping it private are yours. My job is to support you, not judge you. The dinner delivery arrived, breaking the moment. As James went to retrieve it, Miranda remained at the table, the phantom feeling of his arms around her lingering like a promise or a warning. The walls she'd built were cracking, and for the first time in years, Miranda wasn't sure if she wanted to repair them. Truth in the ruins. The emergency board meeting had been called for 9 a.m., but Miranda arrived at 6, needing time to prepare. The evidence against Marcus was damning. Encrypted communications with Compass Tech's CEO, coordinated stock trades before major announcements, and strategic information exchanged for what appeared to be a promised executive position after TerraSync's planned hostile takeover. She stood at the window of the conference room, watching the city wake up. Her cane, now a rarely used accessory rather than a necessity, leaned against the table. When the door opened, she knew without turning who it was. You're early, she said. So are you, James replied, setting 2 coffees on the table. I brought the final documentation and prepared statements for each scenario we discussed. Miranda turned to face him, noticing the shadows under his eyes. Did you sleep at all? A few hours on the couch in my office, he admitted. You? Barely, she said, accepting the coffee. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, sending an unexpected current through her. Everything changes today. Yes, James agreed, his gaze steady. But not everything has to. Before Miranda could ask what he meant, her phone rang. Zoe, calling with news that Compass Tech was making an emergency announcement. James quickly turned on the conference room screen, where Compass Tech's CEO stood at a podium. Pleased to announce our acquisition of TerraSync's neural interface patents, which our legal team confirms were improperly filed. What? Miranda gasped, reaching for her phone to call their patent attorney. James was already pulling up documents on his tablet. This doesn't make sense. I reviewed the filings myself. Because Miranda Frost is not the legitimate owner of the technology, the Compass Tech CEO continued smugly. Her accident conveniently erased her memory of the actual developer, Dr. Elliot Frost, her former partner, who signed exclusive rights to Compass Tech 3 months ago. Miranda felt the room spin. Elliot had been declared dead after disappearing during a research expedition, or so she'd been told. "He's alive," she whispered. James moved closer, his hand finding her elbow to steady her. "Miranda, we need to move quickly. The board will be here in 2 hours, and Compass Tech is clearly coordinating this with Marcus." "It's a lie," Miranda said firmly, her shock transforming into cold fury. "Elliot and I developed that technology together, but he couldn't have signed anything." She stopped abruptly. "You what?" James asked quietly. Miranda met his eyes, knowing it was time for the final truth. "I received confirmation of Elliot's death the day of my accident. That's why I was distracted, why I crashed. The grief. I wasn't paying attention to the road." James's expression softened with understanding. "And the wheelchair charade afterward?" "I needed time," she admitted. Time to grieve privately, to think clearly without everyone watching. Then I discovered the leaks and it became useful. "A test of loyalty," James concluded. Miranda nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how his hand still rested protectively near hers on the table. "A test you passed without even knowing you were being tested." "I think I always knew," James replied softly. "Not about Elliot, but about you watching, evaluating." The intensity between them built as Miranda realized that for all her schemes and tests, James had seen her, really seen her, all along. "We have 2 hours," she said, her voice steadier now. "To save everything I've built." James straightened, professional mode engaged despite the charged moment between them. "We need to prove Elliot's signature was forged and that Marcus facilitated it." As they worked frantically to gather evidence, Miranda found herself watching James, his determination, his unwavering support, his brilliant strategic mind working alongside hers. When their hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same document, neither pulled away immediately. "Why did you stay?" she asked suddenly. "All these months, knowing I was lying, seeing all the tests I put you through." James looked up, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected vulnerability. "Because beneath all the walls and tests, I saw someone worth being loyal to. Not the CEO, not the facade. You, Miranda." The truth hung between them like a bridge across a chasm, offering connection but requiring the courage to cross. Building anew. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of Miranda's office as she signed the final documents cementing TerraSync's new partnership with Neuratech, a smaller but innovative competitor to Compass Tech. 3 months had passed since the explosive board meeting where Marcus had been removed, and evidence of Elliot's forged signatures revealed. Compass Tech's stock had plummeted amid the scandal, while TerraSync emerged stronger. "With Miranda's leadership unquestioned, that's the last of them," she said, passing the signed papers to James. He collected them with a smile. "I'll have these delivered immediately. The development team is eager to begin the joint project." Miranda leaned back in her chair. No longer a wheelchair, but a simple ergonomic design chosen for comfort rather than deception. "We wouldn't be here without you, you know. The board would have sided with Marcus if you hadn't found those encrypted messages." "We make a good team," James replied, his voice warm but professional. In the months since the confrontation, their relationship had evolved into something deeper than CEO and assistant, yet both had been careful to maintain appropriate boundaries at work. Until today. "Have dinner with me tonight," Miranda said, the words emerging with unexpected certainty. "Not as my assistant, not here. Somewhere else, where I'm just Miranda and you're just James." His expression softened, the professional veneer giving way to genuine emotion. "I'd like that very much." That evening, in a small Italian restaurant far from the corporate towers of downtown, Miranda wore a simple blue dress instead of her usual tailored suits. James arrived in dark jeans and a charcoal button-down, looking both familiar and wonderfully new outside the office context. "You look beautiful," he said as he sat across from her. "You look surprised," she replied with a smile. "Not surprised. Just appreciating the opportunity to tell you so without worrying about HR policies." Miranda laughed. a real laugh that reached her eyes. Is that why you never said anything before? HR policies? Among other reasons, James admitted, his expression growing more serious. You were healing, physically and emotionally. And you were my boss. I respected both those boundaries. Miranda reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. And now? Now I see a brilliant, complex woman who no longer needs to test people's loyalty because she knows her own worth, he said, turning his hand to clasp hers. A woman I've admired from the beginning, even when she was pretending to be someone else. The candlelight flickered between them as Miranda felt the last of her protective walls dissolve. I've never been very good at personal relationships. Professional ones are easier, clearer boundaries, defined expectations. Maybe that's the problem, James suggested gently. The best relationships don't have rigid blueprints. They're built day by day, with trust and honesty. Like how you built trust with me, Miranda realized. Not with grand gestures, but with consistent small choices. James nodded, his thumb tracing light circles on her palm. Exactly. Later, walking along the riverfront, their hands remained intertwined. Miranda stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the city lights reflected in the dark water. I've been thinking about playing violin again, she said. My therapist says it would be good for my fine motor skills. I'd like to hear you play someday, James replied. Maybe we could even play together. Miranda turned to face him, close enough to feel his warmth in the cool evening air. I think I'd like that. Building something new together? When he kissed her, it felt both inevitable and surprising, gentle at first, then deepening as she responded, her hands finding their way to his shoulders, his arms encircling her waist. Unlike everything in Miranda's carefully controlled life, this moment wasn't planned or calculated. It simply was. I've wanted to do that since the night of the storm, James confessed, when they finally parted, foreheads still touching. When you let me see the real you for the first time. I think that was the night I started to trust again, Miranda replied. Not just you, but myself. As they walked back toward the restaurant, Miranda realized the truth that had eluded her for so long. Strength wasn't found in perfect control or impenetrable walls, but in the courage to be vulnerable with the right person. And in James, who had seen through her facade from the beginning and chosen to stay, she had found someone worth that courage. The company would continue to thrive. Innovations would be built, and challenges would come. But for the first time since before her accident, Miranda was looking forward, not just to the next business quarter, but to tomorrow, and all the unpredictable, wonderful possibilities it might bring.